6,
7,
7, 8.
8.
Okay, that's the ghetto sync test. Outstanding. Are we still recording? Yes, we are. I'm going to roll right into this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again, listeners to Ad Absurdum podcast. I am Alex Adams. Headed up from me is the eponymous, ephemeral Dallas Kasaboski. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And in addendum to Dallas is Dallas's wonderful girlfriend, Juliette.
Yay.
French last name, don't know. And we're here today again to discuss something until it becomes absurd. And today's topic is going to be horror. Primarily horror movies, but also maybe less, and I just mentioned this right now because I just want to talk about it, horror games, maybe even some other horror media types. And we're just going to kind of talk about what makes a good horror, what makes a horror movie scary. Can horror movies be scary to everybody? Is there a cultural element involved? What makes a horror movie not scary? What makes a horror movie dumb? And what are some of our favorite horror movie experiences?
Yeah, well, thanks for that intro, Alex. So let me give you, audience, let me give you a background of my experience with horror. It's almost zero. I can count on fewer than three fingers how many horror movies I've seen all the way through to the end. Very little experience with it when I was younger, and then when I got older, just little interest. And sometimes I have just an abject objection to horror things.
Maybe even abhorrent.
Yeah, there you go. Lots of puns. So,
very punny.
I'm here today to learn more about it and also to share my opinions and my difficulties, let's say, with it. So, Alex, how about yourself? What you've mentioned horrible things in the past. So, what's your experience with the horror genre?
I mean, I am a horrible person. No, I'm kidding. That wasn't even a pun. I don't even know why I said that. But I've been a fan. There's been a lot of I've had a love affair with horror movies for a long time. It's kind of unfortunately, tragically, even petered out in my just more recent years, probably because of work stress or life situations where I don't really need sources of horror in my life. I've got enough horrible things going on where I don't really need to get into that mode. I can just go to work and have that
you're
happen
like
to
Scream
me.
6 or Donald Trump tweets.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, what did he say now? Oh, we just dated it. We dated it. Whatever, Coney 2012.
Wow,
so,
assuming that the universe doesn't explode, like, soon.
Yeah, soon. Billion years soon. So, initially, I mean, people have been telling themselves and their children scary stories since time immemorial. It's always been there. There's been, bizarre myths. You can go back to the Irish legends, in the Middle East, old England. People are always telling stories about like witch hags and spirits and like creepy shit. Brothers Grimm. There's always been creepy stories because I think people, before the advent of, let's say, roller coasters or some of the more thrilling things we've got in modern society, there's always been people get like a thrill from that because you get that adrenaline boost, but it's not real. You're able to inoculate yourself for one. Inoculate yourself to scary stuff, and you're also able to have, just a little bit of fright, a little bit of shock, and sort of shock yourself out of the benignity of your day. The original horror, and this is not a good experience, but I'm going to tell you my first experience about horror movies. It was, I think, 1994 95, and I was, a young lima bean, and for some godforsaken reason, I went in to see the movie Species, which is this terrible horror movie. It's like a science fiction horror movie about this genetically experimented on young girl, and like alien DNA from Mars or something is introduced to the world, and they're like, oh, let's make a kid out of it. This is a great idea. And so they make a kid, and there's this scene right off the bat where she's in this train. She's eating like a can of yogurt or something like that, and like she's like an alien basically, but she doesn't know it. She's a little kid, and her body like transforms, and all these tentacles explode out of her body and wrap around her into a cocoon. It was so gosh darn traumatic that I flipped out and I left that theater. And the rest is history, because I've been I went to film school. I'm not a filmmaker now, but I went to film school and university, and I was also exposed to a lot of cool horror movies. So yeah, psychological horror, spiritual horror movies, body horror, the torture porn subgenre. I've seen a lot of freaky shit, even that really weird Japanese stuff, which we might get into later. But it's just
Let's hope.
always sort of been senpai. It's always sort of been like a love-hate relationship for me because I'll watch a horror movie and I'll love it, and then I'll turn it off and I'll go to bed, and then I'll hate it because I'm thinking about it. But Dallas and Juliette, you got one of you has seen a lot of horror movies.
I
One of
did.
you has seen. Yeah, can you tell us about maybe some of your first horror movie experiences, or your best or your worst horror movie experiences, whatever comes to mind?
Well,
Hold on a second. Got some background
We got a
noise.
vacuum,
Yeah.
everybody. I'm kidding. Oh no! Oh, they're muted. Oh, they're muted, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just gonna. Yeah, they're nodding in affirmation. Well, I'm gonna continue to talk then. There's one of the second horror movie experiences I had was when I got to see a very scary movie called The Blair Witch Project, and we can revisit this in a little bit. But this was sort of the beginning of some of the real horror movie experiences for me, because I there had always been like an intermediary between the real world and the horror movie world, and in the sense where like you would actually get a lot of scare tactics from horror movies in the 70s, where they would say like, no matter you know what it is, it was the house at the last house on the left, which was a horror movie in the 1970s, really crummy slasher flick, and one of the promotional materials was like, no matter what you think, no matter what you see, remember, it's only a movie, and that was sort of meant to scare people because of that. Good horror movies want to break that barrier down, and they want to get inside your head to think like, oh, could this, this experience is so vivid that I'm imagining it as real, but that's just part of the movie, the idea of a movie, the suspense of disbelief. But what if a horror movie were to convince you that it was real? And that's what happened with the Blair Witch Project for me, because when I saw that, was it 1999, 2001? Dallas, have you seen the Blair Witch Project?
No, but I come from a family that lives in the woods, so I kind of understand the concept.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say maybe that's why it was more
Please.
scary for you, because you're surrounded by like, the forest of skyscrapers, and
Nice,
you're like,
bright buildings.
What are trees? Oh God.
I remember that first time. I think it was actually in your cabin. Excuse me, your house.
Yeah.
In Renfrew. Yeah, I'm a super city slicker. But you just walk into that. You got the fire going. You turn around. And there's like a wall of black, and you're like, "Yep, can't buy a burger here. Can't just go and get a taquito. Get a big gulp, and just nope. Just that's nature right there.
Just the isolation of it. So to backtrack a little bit, yeah, sorry about that. On our side, we had some technical difficulties. But yeah, Juliette, you're going to tell us a little bit about your experience, or at least your first experience with horror.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can
tell us about your first time.
I'm not sure if we can. I'm not sure if we can consider that as a
I'm
real.
Sorry,
I'm just gonna keep talking.
Thank you. Yes, that's what you do with me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Please. Oh boy.
So I'm not sure if it can be considered as a horror movie, but the first kind of like this kind of movie I saw was Seven, with like Brad Pitt and What's in the Box kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's more of a like thriller kind of movie, but
yes,
I think we can agree that it's pretty close to what we can call a horror movie as well.
And since
Absolutely.
then, you've watched quite a lot, right? Like
every
day at lunch.
That was
or
like
whatever?
the first experience, and
Yes.
yeah, that was like I remember it because like most of the horror movies I watched, I don't remember them because they're terrible, and they just don't, But I remember this one obviously because wow, it was still a good movie. I don't remember how old I was, but it was one of the first DVD we got here, like in my family, and
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I still remember it pretty clearly. But after that, like not all, but maybe 80% of all of the horror movies I've seen, and there's a lot, I've actually watched them like while I was at university, while I was eating my lunch every day.
So no effect at all.
No, every day I was eating my lunch with my soup, and at my computer, and I was watching that.
Yeah, most of us are watching like half-hour cartoons, and you're watching like people getting murdered.
Steven
or,
Universe
like,
or something.
Yeah.
And eating soup is a very courageous thing to do in a lot of horror movies because you get one like a sandwich you can drop, or you get like a burrito. You can just leave that or just like shake your hand. But if you got a soup spoon,
No.
So for me, go
ahead, please.
Okay, well, I was gonna say is for me, just to give people a bit more of a background. Like I said, very little experience with horror, the horror genre. When I was younger, we watched. My family and I watched like one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I don't remember which one. It doesn't really matter. Watched one of them, and it was scary. And then afterward, like I had a bunch of friends like staying over, so afterward, my dad it was like we all went to bed, and then my dad was like rustling around and like.
Oh yeah, one of those dads.
Yeah, and like the light would like go on in the hallway, and you'd see like just a claw or whatever. And it was scary, I'll admit, at the time. And then after that, I didn't really watch any. Just it wasn't an interest that my family had. Didn't watch any until I don't even know, like late high school. I watched like half of The Grudge, I think. And
okay,
I watched
the Japanese or the American.
The American, yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then most of The Ring. And,
oh yeah.
And here's the thing about all of this. So okay, I watched them and they were scary, but they just made me angry. More so than because I like we'll circle back around to this, listeners, and I am aware that I am heavily biased away from the horror genre, and like when you hear that you're like, oh, he's just like easily scared or whatever. But for me, what happens when I watch a horror film is, I get scared or whatever, but then I want to fix the problem. I want to solve the situation. And if I can't, then like it's like fight or flight. I don't want to run. I want to like attack like the thing or whatever.
Yes.
So I don't know. We're going to circle back around to this, but for me, I have a problem with horror, and my girlfriend's trying to get me to watch some, and I'm like, because I just don't feel like it. And the problem is
we'll get you a list of classics.
Yeah. Problem is I watch them, and if I am truly scared by it, then I just get angry because I don't want to feel that way, and I don't want
that's understandable.
The thing that's making me afraid, I don't want it to win or to like, to affect me or to damage me. So like, I watch The Ring, and she starts crawling out of the TV, and I'm just thinking like I'm afraid because it's spooky and it was well done, and the whole time I'm thinking like, how would I defeat this person? Because and then you see people trying to, and like nothing they do works, and she just keeps coming, and I'm like, well, I hate this. I don't like this.
Yeah.
Like what? So
make it stop.
There's a lot of themes that make a horror movie really effective, which I think you're cueing in on pretty heavily. One of them being powerlessness, because if you have power over the situation, you're not going to that's not a threat. Like you've got danger, you see danger in a lot of action movies, but what differentiates an action movie from a horror movie? You've got people with guns and bad guys, but the hero is somebody who has personal agency and can, act against this antagonistic force and also understands the force. Die Hard. John McClane understands that the German guys are at the top of Kobayashi Tower.
Nakatomi Tower, yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's like, he's taking off his shoes and he's shooting guns, and it's like yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. He understands the situation and he can act with agency towards the situation. Contrast that with like if you've a more recent one, Don't Breathe, which is a really cool horror movie, which I won't spoil, but it's basically the antagonistic force. It's almost like a monster movie because it's a blind, psychotic war veteran in Detroit in like this burned out house, and a bunch of teenage robbers come in and they try to break into his house, and they don't realize that he's like a super psycho, but he's blind. And so it sets up this really cool situation of there's powerlessness because like this dude is like got guns, and he's like a freakazoid, and also the confusion, the uncertainty. and that can relate to a variety of horror things, whether if it's like a scientific basis, what is for instance, Juliette, have you ever seen the seminal 1988 John Carpenter movie The Thing?
No.
Oh
Sorry.
boy, you're in for a treat.
No, there's a
No,
lot.
no,
There's
don't
a lot of
apologize.
movies I haven't seen, like classical stuff. Like
That's okay.
I haven't seen stuff like The Ring, The Grudge, just stuff like that, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe they're like, maybe I'm biased again, but if they're like that popular, I kind of think that they're only, like their only horror base is like the fact that they're gory, and
Yes.
I think this is.
We'll talk about that.
And I think that you have like several layers, and like the basis of it is gory, and it will work for everyone because no one wants to see like a severed head, no one wants to see blood everywhere, and it's just like the recipe that will always work. And
Absolutely.
There's no, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not going to see that, whatever, and it's actually good. There's a movie like that, and I wanted to talk about it. I think the Saw series, like the Saw movies, like in my opinion, they're all bad except the first one that is glorious. In my opinion,
I agree 100%.
Oh, this is great. This is great.
Well, let's expand on that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil it because I really want him to watch it. So
okay, we won't spoil it. I'll say this much. So Saw in the mid to late 2000s, Saw came out and was pretty groundbreaking in the horror niche, in the Western horror niche market. Because prior to that, I don't know if I can tap in too much about what the movies were coming out around that time, but there weren't a lot of horror movies styled in that way. But Saw was exceedingly graphic. It was visceral. It capitalized a lot on body horror and like just sort of squicked out situations. So there's that famous image, that woman with the giant like sort of dental thing. I don't know if you've seen promotional posters, but like she's got this big dental thing around her face, and it's gonna like explode open like it was a bear trap. They had a bear trap strapped to braces, which is like in itself a hideous idea to think about, which taps into like the idea of disgust, which is another important horror genre element. And it's gonna like she's got to solve this thing, and she's got 60 seconds, and then if it doesn't happen, the bear trap's gonna explode and like blow her face open. But that first movie, Saw, without giving too much away, most of the movie takes place in a single room. So the writing is very, very it's not like groundbreaking, but it's extremely not contrived. What's the opposite of contrived? It's very like meticulous, and they put a lot of details put in on like the building of tension and the revelation of different facts. However, that a lot of the directors of the Saw movies after that, I think actually the main actor became the director of like Saw 5, 6, and 7 or something like that. So, fucking Linkin Park was in like Saw 7 and like Paris Hilton. It got the fucking wheels fell off with the Saw series. Let's just say that. So, but what had happened after that movie spawned this subgenre of really shitty horror movies, which I and a lot of people like to call torture porn subgenre. One of them being, if Juliette, have you seen the movie Hostel?
No. Also, keep in mind that I have seen a lot of horror movies in French, and the titles are different. So.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, you know what a hostel is, right? It's like a.
Airbnb.
Yeah, it's like a
before Airbnb.
It's like a hotel, but a casual hotel that lots of people can stay in. We're dealing with a language barrier.
I'm sorry.
So
it's all good.
I've seen movies called Hostel, but maybe it's different.
I've never seen it.
You would probably hate it because it was exactly the thing that you described as being really dumb, which is just gore for the sake of being gore. So you're not really there's no real fear. You're just kind of like, ew, like these guys really obtuse, rather just sort of like objectified horror guts, and just this guy's getting cut and blowtorch, ew. But there's no real there's no tension because it's just a guy getting hurt. Yes. And then I think 5 or 6 movies came out that was like similar to that, Hostel 2, and then that's one about like a vacation spot. It's like they go to Southeast Asia and oh no, they tortured.
So why do you like these films?
Okay, so these films, I feel like the reason why a lot of people like horror movies primarily is because it gives them a change in their emotions and a change in their psychology. It provides something that their everyday experience is not providing. If someone has a boring desk job or something like that, or someone's just sort of interested in stuff, having that can be like, whoa, this is something so hideous and gross. Another aspect can kind of be like pride. There's an egoistic element. There's an extremely disturbing and gory movie, which I have not seen and will never see, called A Serbian Film, which has some
Yeah.
super fucked up imagery. You know what I'm talking about. And so people are like, I watched the Serbian film, like I watched Hostel and I did get scared, or like I don't care about gore, like whatever. And I think other people, they just get a thrill out of it. It's like a roller coaster to them, and that's I'm like talking everybody's ear off right now.
I like the
but,
idea. I like the idea that a third of the interest in the genre is that the genre doesn't affect you. It's like, I watched all these movies and I wasn't afraid. That's why I like horror.
Well, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
I mean, we'll think it.
It's like, I watched this comedy and I didn't laugh once. I defeated it.
Comedy movies suck. I didn't laugh.
That's why I watch all of them.
That's a really good analogy. Holy shit! I didn't laugh once when I watched Anchorman. I'm the best. Unflappable.
I'm definitely gonna rent Anchorman 2 tonight. Yeah.
Oh man, I wanted to, before I forget, I wanted to mention, because Juliette, you said you really liked the movie Seven, or rather, you saw the movie Seven super early on.
Yeah.
Dallas, have you seen Seven?
I think I've seen parts of it. I know what happens. Like, it's referenced so often elsewhere. I get it.
It's totally. I mean, the movie has so much gravitas that, like, you get to see it in like the meme-averse. Like, if a movie's good enough, usually you get to see memes of it sometimes. But I wanted to mention, I know an interesting like production factoid about that movie, because the pacing of that movie is really slow. It's more of a detective drama, really. There's a lot of disturbing imagery, but there's shocks too. But I don't think it was ever classified as a horror movie. It's definitely a very horrible movie. But the pacing is sort of like, they're trying to catch this killer, and he's like this untouchable badass, and he's killing people in these really grotesque ways. And there's these two gumshoes that are like, one is sort of like this loose cannon guy, kind of buddy cop dynamic, and they're picking up clues and they're talking to the police station. Not a lot happens that really, like, gets you in that way, in the way that, like, I don't know, the opening of Saw would, where it's like, oh my god, bear trap in the face. But so the reason, like, so the editors saw this problem and they're like, we've got a pacing problem here. The audience isn't gonna get anything out of this viscerally until like 45 minutes in the film. So what they did, and I don't know if you remember the intro, but the intro of that movie uses editing and imagery and sound to create this extremely violent, disturbing sort of introduction into the theme of the movie, where you see like this dude scribbling all these weird handwritten notebooks and like all these disturbing, interconnected, like conspiracy theory poster kind of shit. And there's like, flash stuff and really gross shit going on. But the actual art designer for that movie, in this like bid of insanity, wrote like 200,000 words in like a variety of these handwritten notebooks that are like just journals of an insane person. Motherfucker actually wrote for like months, just journals of an insane person, to the point where he had like actual like a bibliography, like stacks of books up to the ceiling, just to like make a point. And just for the set deck, when they go into his house and they're like, this guy's a crazy person, and like Brad Pitt pulls out one of these books and flips through it and reads one line, but all of that shit's actually written out. That's dedication.
So what kind of horror do you particularly like? I mean, you've talked about like the gory and the torture stuff. Yeah. So Julia, what kind do you really like? Like, what have you watched? I don't even know. I said I don't even know, because we don't talk about it.
Well,
we don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to explain, because there is a type of movie. It's not always counted inside the horror genre, but in French it's called épouvante, and it can be translated as dread.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the kind of movie.
Fascinating.
It's the kind of movie that usually doesn't at all show all like guts, blood, gory stuff, but like creates like some kind of like internal like terror by suggesting images, stuff, concepts, or things without necessarily showing it in the screen. So you have all these.
Have you seen Psycho?
I don't know.
Do you know the concept of Psycho? It's the one.
Oh yes. So
yes. Like, is it like that?
Yes, that's like the first steps. But
that's
yes,
why I know it.
That's the kind that's that kind of movie, and you have most movies about ghosts or stuff like that when they're just ghosts and they're not like trying to actively kill you. That's what they try to say. That's what they try to say and to do and to make like this.
The atmosphere, the
yes,
ambiance.
atmosphere, exactly. And they're good movies like that, and there's of course terrible movies like that. But most of them, when they have the funds and the good ideas, it can be like crazy amazing.
And
like,
is it what about that? Like, do you just like just feeling that way, or do you value and appreciate the filmmakers for making you able to feel that way?
And it's like if the filmmaker manages to take you with him, like in this the ride of the movie, that's good. Because most of the time, like I said, I was eating my soup, like it was middle of the day, and you're like, well, you see guts, well, okay, it's fine. But if you're holding soup and you manage to get in the movie, the guy's doing a good job. You can trust me on that.
Okay, interesting.
I've actually never heard of that genre before, but I think I might have and it translates roughly to dread, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, Juliette, the movie Cachet?
No, but it rings a bell somewhere.
So the movie is it's a French movie.
Yeah.
And it's about this, obviously. But it's about this writer or some sort of pundit, and he has this troubled past, and he starts getting these VHS tapes at his front door, and the VHS tapes are surveillance footage of his house. And it's like this perfect, if you want to talk about, like we mentioned, Psycho is a great example of a slow boil. Slow boil in the sense of like, that's the diametric opposition of the kind of movies we were talking about. We were talking about big, flashy, disgusting, in-your-face horror movies. But there's also a equally as effective spectrum of horror movies that are slow and deliberate and plotting, and they just ratchet up that tension. And the family in this movie, the husband and wife, they start finding these tapes, and they're putting it in, and the tapes are getting more and more invasive and more close to their lives, physically closer to their house, but also more close to his personal life. And it's just, the tension is delicious because it starts to affect his work, and it starts to affect his marriage, and he starts having these dreams, and then you get to see parts of his past where, like, there was like maybe intrigue or even murder involved with this. And it's just like, it's one of those things where it's very difficult for me to describe just how the tension, like, people have written essays about this film, but it's one of those situations where you definitely feel that dread, and there's no antagonistic force in the form of a monster, but it's sort of this pervasive, almost like a mist of like, ooh, like, ugh,
that's
what's
exactly what I'm
next?
talking about.
See, and I think that I might have an easier time with, because when it is antagonistic, when it is some villain, or it's like killing people or whatever, just makes me angry. Because the thing is, I'm a bit naive when it comes to my consumption of media. I don't like reading or watching something that ends particularly badly. Artistically, I respect it. I mean, you want to reflect on the real world, or you want to leave, it's, for example, this is a very different genre change, but like, the brilliance of Game of Thrones is that it doesn't end with like happy endings and smiles and everything like most fantasy. It's uncertain, it leaves you in doubt, and like, the reality is that things are, people will betray each other and bad things will happen. And I respect,
it's blunt.
I respect that.
Uncompromising.
But I usually choose to pursue things that end more positively, because there's enough negative in the world. I want to, like, if I'm going to escape into something, I want something, even if it doesn't end entirely positively, I still want someone to be like, but it's not all bad. I want there to be something.
Closure.
So maybe I could probably get around watching more like dread or suspense or
but the problem is horror movies that like most of the time they like the producers and directors and whatever they always plan on making like 50.
Well, that's why you got to watch like the classics where there's only one.
Like the worst movie for that, in my opinion, is Paranormal Activity.
Oh yeah.
You're reading my mind, Juliette. Totally.
There's also the movies Inside Us, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce that.
Insidious?
Yes, Insidious. That. Like these movies, I've seen the first one because it actually seemed like a movie, like we talked, like a movie more like dreadish than horror-ish in your face, and it kind of was. It was interesting, and the end was terrible because like. Did you just cut in the middle of the movie? Because I have absolutely no answer. And it's like, ugh.
See, and that's the thing. That's my problem is with the big, like, let's say the loud horror or whatever, where there's some force that's coming to like kill you or kill everyone. It's just, I don't know. I just like it. Like I said, it just makes me upset because either I'm actually afraid that such a thing will happen, in which case it makes me want to prepare against it. If you watch a movie and like, oh, crazy serial killer, like whatever, or, your friend gets like, I have so little experience with horror, I can't even make up situations, but like, if
there's a lot of break-in movies like that, like You're Next, or the not the others. Just like for briefly, sorry to cut you off, but like there's like a 14-month period where there's about 16 movies that came out about freaks with masks, like humans in masks, just breaking into houses and like killing people and doing nefarious shit.
Yeah, so okay, if we even go on the scale of like realistic to paranormal, I guess you have the like, I don't know, I haven't even seen Psycho. I know, what a sin, but.
But you signed up for this, Julie and I have seen horror movies. It's all good, man.
So, but you go from like, okay, serial killer, and it's like, all right, while I like, the problem is that there's a spectrum of from the real to the paranormal, and there's the spectrum of like dread to horror gore. And then there's also how I feel while I'm watching it versus how I feel outside of the movie. So there's a lot to get through. I'm going to try and like run quickly through my ideas here, so I'm not talking for an hour. But dread makes sense to me. That's kind of neat. I think the idea of exploring those kind of feelings. I mean, I'm not as much as I pursue positive media, I still appreciate the negative. I think you need to have both in order to have a full human experience, etc. The like scary, like, it's gonna kill you or whatever. If you have something that's real, like a serial killer, or you're in an insane asylum, it's not even a real thing, but if you're in a place where there's unstable people who are gonna kill you, well, there are people like that in reality. And I want to incarcerate them. I want to, or like, irrationally, I want to fight them.
That's
I want
because
to
your mind is too logical. You're like, why are you doing this? Why don't you just stab the person while you can? Why are you running here?
But even illogically, like even like it's not just like a Vulcan watches like your action is incorrect. You should not have gone to the basement while you didn't know.
Tuba watching a horror.
But like, but even irrationally speaking, I'm watching it and I'm like, I get angry. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. No. And so
don't
in the
split
movie,
up.
I'm upset.
Why are you splitting up?
It's not even a comment on the people. It's just I get angry that such a thing exists because I don't like, you don't want such a force to exist. You don't want people to get unstable, grab a hook off the wall and start killing people. So I get mad about it. I get mad that like they're not being stopped. And then if that carries over into the real world, into like the movie's over, I'm not watching it, but I'm still thinking about it. Well, then I get mad because such things do exist. They do happen. And so the whole experience is unlikable for me, at least in the little experience I have, right? So I'm watching it, I'm not liking it. I'm outside of it, I'm thinking about it, I'm not liking it. And then when you go up to paranormal, well, then the problem becomes that I'm even more angry because now I'm either angry because I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. Such a thing shouldn't exist, and it shouldn't, like, I get mad that, like, I don't know, creatures like coming out of nowhere and killing everyone. And then in real life, I get mad at the fear, because it's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
afraid of, like, a ghost. Like, what was the movie? I watched part of a movie that will explain my point. I can't remember what it was called, but, like, a bunch of people go spelunking in caves underground, and then they
The Descent?
yeah,
maybe?
The
The
Descent.
Descent.
I
So
like this movie for a very specific reason.
so I'm well, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
sorry.
should tell. We'll talk about that. That's one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
So I'm like, I'm mad because I don't know what these people are or what these things are, and now in the real world I'm afraid of such a thing, and I'm like, this is not doing me
Yeah,
any
but
good.
in a way, like the point I was about to make is that don't you think that if you keep watching that kind of movie, it actually mentally prepares you to face this situation better if it ever happens? Like, don't you want to watch like The Walking Dead all the seasons just in case you ever have this situation in your hands? I don't know. It can be a
It's a fair point, but the problem is that it's still it's framed in hopelessness, and it's framed in,
that's not true.
well, like The Walking Dead is about, like, this is a different conversation, but zombies, a lot of zombie genre is a feeling of hopelessness, because it's like, humanity is done, civilization is over, and then what do the people do? Yeah, they band together. Also, they betray each other, and they turn on each other, and they start fighting each other for materials. So I get that. I get mad at that,
I'd
because
love
I'm like,
to see like a utopian horror movie, where everyone is working together.
well, there are
That'd be
no, but
amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Oh,
just
wow.
so anyway, listeners, long story short, the idea of mentally preparing myself is one that I can get behind. The idea of mentally and, like, artistically appreciating what they're doing, I get. But the actual experience of watching a situation where there's a lack of power or control, or there's a lot of bad things happening, or there's a lot of, like, not bad, but, like, just there's, like, bad things are happening and people are doing bad things, and it sounds so simple when I say that. It's like such a little kid watching movies, like, they're not being good to each other, they're not being nice. But I just watch it and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like to escape into this fiction where everything is bad. So I don't know. It's a very simplistic, like, view, and I feel that, like, if I had a bit more experience, I could maybe come around to liking it. But I have such a wall of bias that I have to, like, punch through. So anyway, you guys were talking about The Descent. So
I
Yeah,
don't want to spoil
please.
it, but
I
Can
think
I?
I know
I think I've
what
seen-
you're commenting on.
I think I've seen most of it.
okay, spoiler alert. The reason why I really like this movie is that at the end everyone dies and it's the end.
Yeah.
And that's perfect, because you're, like, not in any, like, paranormal shit or like what's gonna happen. I don't understand. You have you get the answer of all of your questions, and it's the end. And it's great. It's a fantastic experience.
Yep. There's closure. It's dark, but there's closure. It's not like because we were talking about Paranormal Activity earlier on. Mike Stoklasa of Red Letter Media fame had this great summary of, like, because people like that. This is why in my personal opinion, why The Descent is not, like, there was a sequel, but The Descent movies like The Descent aren't gonna be like The Descent 5, Descend Harder, The Deepest Descent, because the movie ends and everybody dies, and then the people go out of the theater and they're like, oh, I'm kind of bummed out, oh, I don't feel good, like, that movie made me feel stuff, screw that. But you got, like, Paranormal Activity or, like, Annabelle or all these extremely dumb shot, like, you're not even scared, you're just sort of surprised for a moment because they're all jump scares, so, like, you just anything can shock you if there's a long silence and then a big shrieking pulse in string instruments. But so it's basically, like, he describes it as being just like a thrill ride where you're just kind of, like, in the roller coaster and you're moving along and, like, blah, ghost, and you're like, oh wow, and then you keep going along, they're talking about dumb stuff, and they're like, blah, a haunted doll, oh my god, and at the very end they all end at the exact same time, the exact same way. You've got what's that other one? The Bagul, whatever that movie had the Bagul in it. And just like, a big long pause of like a video camera or something, or like, the camera gets knocked off, you can see a hallway, and then blah, and the guy comes in and goes, oh, oh, and then you get the adrenaline shock. You're not thinking of anything. The situation or the idea, the mental landscape isn't disturbing in the film. You're just shocked. So it's like, ooh, oh, and then you just walk out of the theater. You're like, oh, the movie was nice. But truly disturbing movies don't really sell as much as like shocking,
and
like
I think as I've listened to that, I think one of the problems, the reason that I didn't have much experience with horror when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I'm pretty lucky. I live a life where I don't experience fear often. And I think that's actually the reason that I don't really like appreciate horror, is because I don't experience fear often, like so infrequently. I can't remember the last time I was actually afraid.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, exactly, right? So then I
jobs.
Yeah. So then I go into like, then there's like a horror movie or whatever, and it's a feeling I'm not used to. It's a feeling that I don't like. So all my defenses go up, and they're like, no, this is wrong. This is not cool. This is not good. So I think if I had a little bit more experience with like real horror or fear, then
You'd be like, ha ha ha, I lived worse.
Yeah, exactly. I lived worse, or even like you said, like, oh, this is, far scarier than I have to deal with. I can now, like, that. You wouldn't think this consciously, but you'd watch a horror film and be like, oh, that was so frightening. Oh, but those taxes I have to do are no problem now. It's not. I think that if I had more experience with that, I would let it in, and I would be able to, to appreciate it more. But as it is, my default setting is I don't like it, and it's so bad because I try to be very open-minded about everything, but when it comes to horror, it's just I'm watching it, I'm not liking it, I'm not liking it. When do I like this? I'm not so. But
the credits are rolling.
But contrary,
I'm not liking it.
but on the other side, like objectively, I appreciate it artistically. I appreciate fear is good for the human psyche. Like a little bit of fear in all of our like stories. Like I appreciate the concept, but not the application as applied to me, I think.
The thing also I wanted to talk about is for people like you that don't really like horror movies or don't watch them often, they made this genre of like goofy horror movies. But I think you wouldn't like them either because like stupid humor and stuff like that. But yeah, like when you were talking about why are people watching horror movies, and you mentioned like Pride, and I survived this movie, I wasn't afraid. Like people like for Halloween parties or whatever, everyone's been watching I don't know what kind of terrible how's it called, like Scream movies or kind of goofy stuff like that. And I think that's also a kind of try from the from the Hollywood movie industry to sell their movies to a larger kind of audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
People who aren't into horror are like, well, this is kind of scary, but also kind of adventurous or funny or whatever.
Yeah.
It's Halloween, we want to see a movie, so like let's just watch this movie.
Yes,
man.
That can be a solution, but like to get in the thing that never a good
But the quality is not usually there.
The only thing I can think of, maybe I'm biased, but like the only kind of goofy horror movies I like are Rob Zombie's movies, like the House of a Thousand Corpses and the Devil's Rejects.
Devil's Rejects. Yeah, I've heard
those
of
are
them.
good. Those are good.
That's pretty good.
That's because it's not just a movie to sell like horror to teenagers with like few jokes here and there. It's because like that guy, he has like his own universe. He's been like soaking into horror and like references from all the like the 20s 30s, like all this like kind of, and like he did all the music, and of course he's not going to waste it. So yeah, I really like what he does, and that's actually the only goofish kind of stuff that I really appreciate. That guy's
So
full of talent.
So this is interesting because I was just thinking about the, you mentioned earlier, Alex, like there's always been kind of these scary stories told in our culture, and so here's the funny thing. Frankenstein, the story Frankenstein was essentially
Mary Shelley.
Yeah, essentially made up because Mary Shelley, her husband Percy Shelley, and Lord Byron were basically like, I'm not sure if these are exactly 100% facts, but this is the story I remember. They were basically like in a cabin in the middle of winter. They couldn't really go anywhere. So they started exchanging horror stories, scary stories. And Frankenstein was the one that she shared. And that's where it comes from. So, that was written a while ago. And now when you read it in school, you're not really afraid of it. Because you've seen Frankenstein's monster, you've seen references, and it's also generally I've found that if something is scary like 100 years ago, it's not that scary today, at least in its application.
Kind of antiquated.
Yeah. So I read the book, I really enjoyed it, and I thought about like the themes and the lessons that you learn, and I'm like, yeah. So I'm like distilling the other than the fear and the exhilaration, I'm distilling the theme, because I feel like that's what Frankenstein is supposed to do. It's supposed to be like, oh my god, this is terrifying, like this is horrible, and then through the fear your brain is supposed to process and trickle out do not play God, be careful of your inventions, nature is still more powerful than you, be in awe of it, do not be too arrogant,
find a way.
Yeah. So I feel like that's what that's what that horror story is supposed to do. It's like exhilaration and the fear, you get that's like the entertainment / staying power / just part of the experience, and then you trickle out to the theme. And I just bypassed it because the story is like 100 years old, and I was like, I'm not afraid of it anymore. So I feel that a lot of my appreciation for horror is, which is still small, I feel that my appreciation for horror as a concept is because, we should, use horror to as another device for teaching us lessons, and all the movies about scary murderers, any of the good ones, there's usually a theme there. There's, all the scary movies about zombies you could talk about are some kind of reflection on consumerism, communism, blah 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 blah.
You should watch one of the I think one of the most recent how's it called, version of Frankenstein stuff, and it's in the series Penny Dreadful.
Oh yeah.
And it's really really good. You should really watch that.
Yeah.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, so
I've never
I was just going to say I feel that that's my issue, is that I do like it and I do respect it, but as it's applied to me, I'm just like I don't like that exhilaration. I don't like that. I like feeling, invigorated. I don't like feeling afraid, which is who does, but whatever. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, not at all. It's funny. I've actually never thought of that idea of horror or any genre other than, I guess, its own implicit genre of being sort of have a moral story to it, like a moral rectitude element of a horror.
Well, that's where scary stories come from, right? Think about little kids. It's adults tell kids scary stories, and part of it's entertainment, and I'm sure part of it is the parable. It's the don't trust strangers because they'll cut you.
Don't be a little brat, or the ogre will eat you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, precisely. Oh yeah, if you run away, if you tell lies, and all this really morbid shit. If you tell lies, demons are gonna cut out your tongue, and don't if you be mean, you have Kris Kringle, and then you have the Krampus. I don't know if this is a Scandinavian tradition, but Santa Claus will give you presents, but the Krampus is just this demon troll who will just steal your ass and put you in a bag and bring you to hell or somewhere, which is that's what you want to tell kids.
We have this guy here.
Mhm.
I do have one. I have one example though of a true horror movie being also a moral story, and that is Pinocchio. And for those of you who think Pinocchio isn't a horror movie, I beg you to rewatch the scene where they all turn into donkeys and they're screaming for their moms to save them as they're being grotesquely mutated into donkey people. That shit is
Have you seen
traumatic.
it?
But
No.
oh,
Yeah.
it's
So
brutal.
basically, you know, he he wishes to become a real boy, and the fairy is like, if you prove yourself and whatever, then you'll be a real
Mm.
boy. And he runs away from home, and he gets lost, and he ends up at this like camp, and all these boys are like, this place is great, there's food and you can smoke cigars if you want, there's like Ferris wheels and it's great. And what
And
they
like
end up finding,
pool.
yeah, what they find out is that it's like a playground run by a evil merchant. And what happens is, if the kids drink the water or whatever, or the beer, if they drink, I think it's beer actually,
If they get involved in any of the
yeah,
the immoral, licentious
they literally turn into
doings,
donkeys, and then he sells the donkeys to
Wow.
like
That's
to farmers
salt
for
mines.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. There's a great there's a great little video on Cracked about like how crazy Pinocchio is. But anyway, yeah, and there's this scene where he's there, and he's like, it's like him and this other guy like Jack or some, whatever kid's name. And the guy's like, yeah, this place is great. You can smoke cigars all the time. And as he does it, he starts turning into a donkey. And like as he's starting to scream, like, for help, he starts like doing the sound that donkeys do. And Pinocchio's just like, I'm out of here. And he like jumps out the window or whatever. And yeah, that's true. That is pretty horrifying.
Shit's morbid. I have so you've taken great detail at describing the elements of Dallas, the elements of why you don't like a given horror movie. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with like the complete, like, you're presented with an impossible problem in a horror movie, and you just sort of got to deal with that a priori. You've got like this plague has wiped out everybody, or there's this ghost and it's gonna kill everybody, and we don't know what's up. We just run. We just gotta go. I offer for you a horror movie that is, I think, the most Dallas horror movie ever. It's called Oculus.
In a world without logic.
Okay, this is in a world where nobody's an idiot. There's this literally haunted mirror that has a bunch of freaky ghost powers, and when the sister, and I won't spoil the end, but when the sister and brother are kids, the ghost mirror like kills their parents or some shit, and the brother gets sent to the brother's blamed for it, and the brother gets sent to an insane asylum, and he comes back like 16 years later and meets the sister, who's this like well-to-do CEO of some company or whatever, like an art dealership. So they meet together. She buys this antique mirror back that was in their parents' house or something like that, and she's like, hey, listen, do you remember that haunted mirror that like killed our parents? And the brother's like, what? No, that's and the brother's like, well, no, my psychologist said. And she's like, shut up, here's how it's gonna work. I've hung this mirror here, and there's 3 video feed cameras that are live streaming to an off-site data collection, and so all of the tropes are just turned on their head, because it's like, the mirror, if you put a plant by the mirror, the plant starts to die. And she's like, yeah, so I've put plants at 3, 6, and 9 feet away, and you can see the plant death circle at about 8 feet, and all the organic life within that feet. So that must be the range of the mirror's control. And we've got this hammer right here that's on this swivel, so if anything happens after 1 hour, if anything happens, the hammer is gonna like uncouple and break the mirror. And we've got these video feeds. So the brother's like, this is bullshit. What the fuck? This is dumb. And then they look back at the video feed outside of the room of the mirror, and the video feed's all black, and they're like, what the fuck? They run back into the room, and there's chairs and shit blocking all the cameras. And he's like, we don't remember doing that. How did the mirror just move it? And she's like, shut up. And she reviews back the live video feed, and they were as they were talking, it was filmed as if they were just in a room talking, but what they were actually doing is moving furniture in front of all of the cameras. So she's like, gotcha, bitch, I got the mirror's tricks, I'm gonna offload this. So 100% logical. And she's like, yeah, I've got like the lights go off, and she's like, shut up, I have a backup generator. She plugs the generator back on. Like, the hallucinations are corroborated with video surveillance. So when they're hallucinating, she could just look at the video feed and be like, "That's a hallucination."
But like,
It's the
does
best.
the mirror eventually get her hubris or what? Or is this just like a
It's a 10 on 10 because the mirror starts pulling freakier and freakier shit, and the hallucinations start getting more and more vivid.
So it's like a horror film where someone occasionally, it's like a horror film with director's commentary on.
Yeah, precisely.
What's it called? What's this called?
Oculus.
That sounds kind of
It's
fun,
hilarious.
actually. Yeah, because like I could. Yeah, that sounds like a kind of introductory to horror because it's like you dip your toe in the water and you're like, oh, this is scary. I don't like this. And someone turns on the light and you're like, no, that's stupid. See, because of the thing and the. So I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's the one horror movie where people are like, it's played completely flat. Like, it's still pretty spooky, but it's like, it's the movie where they're like, yes, we understand. Here's the problem. We understand the problem. The mirror is haunted, and it has like a mind control field, and it kills plants
Sounds
around
like an
it,
episode
and
of
it
Star
coerces
Trek.
people.
Right
Yeah.
Inciting incident.
Yeah, no, precisely.
Scary thing. Run some
Yeah.
experimentation.
In the
on it.
horror dimension,
Yeah.
Captain Janeway.
Oh man. Well, I've just about exhausted my personal opinions on a variety of horror films. I think horror films are the best when they get inside your head and they mess you up a little bit, but you know, not just relying on, you know, old tropes, even though it's the tropiest genre, I've got to admit. But I think they always have had a special place in my heart. I've had that Army of Darkness poster up in my house for like 10 years, even though it's not really a horror movie, it's more horror comedy. But Dallas, has your opinion changed at all? Are you willing to dive in and see something truly disgusting?
I think so. I mean, I've been slowly working up to the idea for a while. I want to keep an open mind for these things. I'm just not sure how far I'm gonna get. Like, I feel, you know, I don't like tomatoes, and every few years I try one, and I'm just like, yep, still don't like it. So maybe that will happen with horror, but no, it's been a good conversation. I just, like I said, I had no idea what the appeal was because when you don't have much experience with it when you're young, when you get older, a lot of times watching a horror film is more of a recreational, like, let's make fun of it. Like, I've seen more horror films with the lights on, with everyone like yelling and laughing, than I've seen like an actual sit down, immerse in the film. But I think it does have merit, and I think, you know, obviously with some experts here by my side, I can, you know, avoid a lot of the tropes and the bad stuff.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But I still think it's a genre that I will have a problem with because I either get really rational and I'm like, this is implausible, this is not right, or I get really irrational and I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like people, you know,
dumb.
Yeah, it's a reason.
Just use fire, idiot. You saw the monster in the second act recoil from fire. You got fire right there. Just use fire, man.
So yeah, I think that's good. Do you have anything else to add?
Final comments?
So thank you, listeners, for checking us out. We're steadily trying to improve the channel. Next time we might do some video, so you might actually get to see our faces.
Oh, yes.
We might even do a live stream. Alex and I are both slowly learning more about. Well, Alex has film editing experience, but I have none. So I'm trying.
Just a tiny bit.
So I'm trying to learn how to actually like capture what we're doing here, and I really like to put it up. So if you guys have any comments or anything below, anything, you know, if you think I'm crazy and I'm not giving horror genre a chance, or you have an idea for our next podcast, definitely drop us a comment below, and make sure you subscribe because we try to keep a once a month rotation of these. But it's always a random different day, and
100% random.
Yeah, so if you want to stay tuned with us, make sure you subscribe below. So thanks.
Good stuff. This has been the we didn't even tell you the episode name or number. You'll get that on the YouTube. You'll get that on the video. This has been Absurdum, ladies and gentlemen. Signing off for now, and we will see you next time.